Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Search Engine Journal webinar. It is really amazing and great to have you with us today. And we're going to be joined today by Garrett, CEO and co-founder of Directive. As I've mentioned in some of my podcasts or in some of my conversations, one of my favorite speakers right now, super smart guy, very, very actionable tips and advice, and very, in the weeds and really kind of in the mess of marketing. So it's really relevant, information always, and super excited to have him again. Today, we're going to be talking about how to never miss your MQL goal again. Something I think all of us in this space would love to accomplish, not missing our goal. And I think you're going to really enjoy the presentation. I had a chance to obviously go through it in advance, and I was super impressed with it, and I'm sure you're going to be as well. If you're wondering who this is speaking, my name is Brent Satoris, and I will be your moderator today. Garrett, can you tell us a little bit about yourself before we go into some housekeeping points?
Yeah. Well, glad to be here, everybody. So thank you for tuning in. My name is Garrett Mehrguth. I am the CEO and co-founder at Directive. We do performance marketing for SaaS firms, and just super excited to walk through with you all some of the tactics we're seeing. I got some templates. We got some different approaches, people management stuff. It's gonna be a really deep dive, fun time talking about how to influence MQLs.
Awesome. So a little bit about some housekeeping. If at any point during the webinar you have any questions or comments, please feel free to ask through the webinar question box at the bottom of your screen. Also, we will have a few polls in the presentation. It's an opportunity for you to provide some feedback and give us your thoughts. We do ask everybody, just take a moment and please help us with the polls. It does help Garrett kind of decide how much he's going to dive into different areas or what he might talk about as he continues on. It also helps us understand where to pick questions, in relevance for the Q&A at the end. Speaking of Q&A, we have a Q&A at the end of the presentation. So at any time that you have questions throughout the presentation, please throw them in there and we will get to them at the end of the presentation during that period. If during the presentation there are any resource links or tools that are mentioned, we will do our best to link those in the chat. But if we miss something for whatever reason, just make sure to comment. We'll get it in there. After the webinar, I ask you we take 5 minutes. We have a quick survey at the end. Really doesn't take a lot of time. We review this. Garrett reviews this every single time we have a webinar to help us improve. Sometimes people tell me to stop talking so much, and then I stop talking so much. Sometimes people tell me to talk more, and I talk more, et cetera, et cetera. So even I take some of this feedback to help out, and so does Garrett, and so do we all. So please take a moment, it doesn't take long. And then lastly, the entire webinar is going to be recorded and sent out, I believe, through email and through a recap post that will be available this next Monday. Without any further ado, Garrett, let's dive into the webinar.
Let's do it. Well, thank you so much, Brent, for having me. Excited to be here. And most importantly, excited to talk with you all. So we're going to be talking about today SaaS marketing, how to never miss your MQL goal again. Wouldn't that be nice? We got a little bit of an agenda, so I want to kind of make sure you guys kind of know what's coming. First and foremost is really what's going on in SaaS. Like, let's really understand the landscape, and then I can kind of introduce you to a differentiated approach that's been very successful for ourselves and for our clients. Some financial models. I'd love to walk you through, I think, the biggest gap in marketing today, which is not how good we are at SEO or PPC or content or PR, but how good we are at measuring, managing, and allocating our capital. Then we're going to go over 3 tactics. I'm going to put my CMO hat on, put myself right there in that seat and say, here's the 3 things I would do if I could do anything. And then lastly, how do you empower people, right? It's great to be an individual contributor sometimes, but how do you get more out of your team? How do you bring them all together? So we're going to walk through all 4 of these things today and have a great time. So let's get after it. First off, we need a differentiated approach. I think at the end of the day, there's so many marketers that are sitting in their seat, they're working hard, but they're not seeing the results they used to have. And this is for a plethora of reasons. But I think one of the biggest reasons is that things have changed. It used to be, the old funnel was, I have this product, right? And I need people to be aware of my product, so when they see it, they want it. And the idea was that we need to do top of funnel awareness because consumers can't discover us. And then something changed, right? these websites like Amazon and Yelp started to grow by aggregating people's opinion of a product and saying, well, what do you think about that $5 breakfast burrito? How many stars does that get for you? And so people now are able to get their own interest in something, evaluate their options, then become aware of what exists, capture that intent, consider, and purchase. And so in this new funnel, what's so important is understanding the reality you're playing in. So how do we adapt to this? How do we understand what to do in this new environment as SaaS marketers? And the big idea that we need to embrace here is that your brand is now more important than your website. We go back in a little time machine to 1997. The internet is coming to life. The search engine of Google is being born. And people have this question. They say, hey, I heard about the internet and this search engine called Google. How do I show up on it? And the universal answer back then was, well, you need a website. And unfortunately, no one changed that opinion, and hopefully until today, where we're now starting to say, what if our website is less important than our brand? It's not that it's not important. What if it's less important? And what I mean by brand is based off of an actual SERP reality. So I'm going to hop off this real quick, and we're going to look at this together. We're going to have some fun. So we're going to look at a B2C query called best day trading software. Okay. And what we're going to find here is we're going to have 4 ads above the fold. Okay. Now, what's really interesting about this is that your click-through rate doesn't widely vary from the 4th spot to the 1st spot. Mostly your CPC does. Okay. And then you have these SERP features. And then we have different third-party review sites. And this is where it gets crazy. Okay. This day trading software, not an individual day trading software. NerdWallet, not a day trading software. Warrior Trading, it's a blog post. Stockbrokers.com, blog post. Individual websites and their core pages are no longer ranking. And that's for a B2C query. Okay. We're going to go over and we're going to take a little look here as fast as we're allowed at a B2B query, best accounting software. Okay. And when we do this, once again, SERP feature at the top, this time 4 ads, and then PC Mag, business.org, Capterra, Business News Daily, Startups Anonymous, The Balance, Investopedia. Like, where's QuickBooks? QuickBooks is one of the most popular software companies out there amongst business owners for accounting. They have a very strong market share. Now, my point here is not that QuickBooks has bad SEO. QuickBooks isn't missing something. It's that the search engine results page has changed. If consumers have expressed that they want third-party information when they get a burrito, in other words, they want to hear what other people are saying before they buy a $5 burrito, they are sure as hell wanting information before they buy a $250,000 or $20,000 or $30,000 software. And Google caught on to this. And so what Google decided to do, which was, I think, really wise of them, was put their searcher first. And they realized that these searchers want unbiased information. And so now, if you aren't showing up here, you're missing out on up to 30% of your market share. And so SEO is no longer about trying to get your website ranked to rank here on the bottom of the funnel sometimes, because it can't. Google won't allow it. It's not that QuickBooks doesn't have an accounting software page. It's that Google's saying third-party sites are better. And you'll also notice third-party sites are starting to bid, right? They're actually charging other people, right? So if they charge you $5 a click and they can share that across 10 clicks and Google charges them $3 a click, let's say, well, why don't they advertise? So here's a review site advertising. Here's a review site advertising. What's that doing? That's driving up the cost per click, decreasing the profitability, and it's adding competition. This new reality is very real, and we need to be aware of it. So with that in mind, let's look at some data and what we can do about it to further kind of dive into this. So one of the biggest parts here is click-through rate. I can't tell you how many marketers, right? We work with over 300 SaaS firms in the last couple of years here. And these are exceptionally sharp marketers, really, genuinely, very sharp. VC-backed, private equity-backed, publicly traded companies. They still almost all universally default to Google Ads. advertising on a search engine equal Google Ads. But the truth is that's not necessarily your best option, because if you advertise on Google Ads, you're going to average a 2 to 4% click-through rate. So let's say 100 people are searching for that accounting software query. If our plan to advertise to people with purchase intent on a search engine is Google Ads, we're only capturing 4% of the total addressable market. Wow, the number one organic result is now a paid listing. This is great news for startups, right? I can be a startup accounting software company, build a great product, get some raving fans, I'm talking 10 to 15 users compared to the millions on QuickBooks, and immediately look like a true competitor to QuickBooks by simply paying to be X, Y, or Z on a review site. So when we change our fundamental here and understand how we can position ourselves, we put ourselves in a really, really strong spot. And from this, you'll see number one spot, 32% market share. So now we have an ad, let's say 2% market share, number one spot, 32%, and then we're in other review sites, all within the top 5. We now almost have complete discoverability. And that is a really, really important part of being able to drive MQLs. You can see here, this is across millions of dollars of spend across all of our SaaS clients, and we're averaging a 4% click-through rate, right? You don't necessarily want too high of a click-through rate because you ideally want to use your ad copy to pre-qualify your clicks. In other words, if you are required to do X amount of seats or X amount of price, a really great way, especially if you're a mid-market or enterprise organization who doesn't win on price, but instead on quality, you can include base fundamental pricing in there. Then you'll essentially be able to disqualify the wrong clicks, qualify the right ones, and lower your cost per acquisition. Pretty cool little tactic. Wanted to give you all some data too. So we have good relationships with all these different platforms. What I think is so interesting here is if you look at it just at face value, which is still, I think, a gap in marketing today, where, especially in B2B, okay, or in any really product where we say the cost per acquisition, it is the priority. So what I mean by that is a lot of our clients will take over accounts, and they've been working with an agency that specializes, frankly, in e-commerce or business to consumer or just generic. They're not truly SaaS experts. And so what happens is they've been brainwashed that the lower your CPA is, the better. And so what they do is they take your most expensive terms and they stop bidding on them. But unfortunately, sometimes your most expensive terms are also your most valuable. And so what's interesting to see here is that even though Capterra has a much higher cost per click or software advice, GetApp's a little lower, they're much more like applications, so it's a little different marketplace, but the same idea. They have much better close rates and cost per opportunity. In other words, these are more qualified leads. You know why? Because the consumer went to a third-party site, did their research, and chose you. That right there is powerful for your sales development team and your account executives, okay? And so let's take a moment real quick here, Brent, and we're gonna do a poll. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Let me go ahead and pop this up and launch it for everybody. Again, if you can just take a moment, we're looking to find out what is your biggest growth struggle right now. Hitting pipeline and revenue targets, providing ROI of marketing generated activities, C, sales and marketing alignment, D, acquiring buy-in from stakeholders for additional budget, or is it something else completely? Again, take a moment, and if you have a chance, just please, let us know what your biggest growth struggle is right now. And we'll give a couple seconds for everybody who's considering it over. Some of the answers are pretty close. I actually can see the percentages as they go, so
I
I can
love it.
see where some of them are at. So I'm trying to wait till I get some statistical confidence, because 2 of them are neck and neck. So I'll give it another couple seconds. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and yeah. Oh man, I keep seeing it not edging, so I'm trying to, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and stop because I think we're getting pretty close to as far as we're gonna get. And basically, I don't know, Garrett, if you can see the results too, but I'm showing the results
Oh,
to everybody. A is 34% and B was 35%. Garrett, can you see those results on your screen?
oh yeah, and this is such great timing because literally we're about to address item B, so I'm excited about this.
Perfect, perfect. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and hide this and let you go back to the presentation.
All right, beautiful,
Oh,
beautiful. Cool.
there we go.
Let's go on it. So, financial modeling. Now, a little honesty, I love finance. I see it as like a secret weapon. Sales and finance to me are so much more important than link building or on-page SEO or bid management. It's really about people, finance, and sales, right? It's about really understanding those three levers. And so today we're going to actually talk about those. And I'm going to give you guys some worksheets that I use here at Directive that really help to understand and prove the ROI of what we're doing. And I think help with the most effective thing you can do in the short term, which is getting better at capital allocation. We worked with Exactly. They're a SaaS company backed, private equity backed by Vista Group, really, really sharp organization. But we were able to grow them over 300% in one quarter by simply reallocating where they spent their money. And so today what we're going to look at is how we can do this. So we're going to use what's called LTV CAC modeling. And we're going to understand the actual lifetime value versus the customer acquisition cost of all of our marketing channels. And I'm going to actually give this to you guys so you guys will all actually have this. So we're going to look at two different ways of doing it. This is the non-trial. So if you have a SaaS firm and you don't do a free trial, here's what you can use, okay? And we have a whole model here, so you can model out different scenarios and then look at each of your channels in real time, right? And so what this does, which is really, really cool, is it allows you to put in all your numbers, and you can do this at the product level as well. So let's say you sell 3 different products, all with different average contract values, close rates, SQL to operates, MQL to SQL rates, average order values, etc., and calculate it. Now the beauty here is we can say and run through any type of scenario and see what's most efficient. Now this is all just sample data, but let's say I want to spend more on Capterra. I go and I look and I'm looking at the LTV CAC ratio. I'm like, oh, 13.6, that's pretty good. But G2 is crushing it right now. How do I spend more on G2? Or hey, Google Ads is doing okay, but I really think I could do this better. And the second we start modeling this out and we start driving budget and working on these types of elements, we get such better alignment from our CFO. The CMO starts to trust us. If you are a CMO and you don't have something like this for financial modeling, this will be an absolute game changer in your standing in the organization. So highly recommend. On the other end of it, we have a free trial one. So very simple but awesome model where you can actually go in, see how much, let's say, your team costing, software is costing, ad spend is, how many customers you want, and then it'll poke out for you in real time, LTV CAC ratio, months to recover, and then you can start to use this as a log to get better at forecasting, budgeting, and all these different areas. So really, really special to be able to do. Now, some things you're going to need that I want to highlight if you don't have already. I'm going to zoom here actually a little bit because I think it'll help. Some of the data and working with clients that I found can be a little difficult is you're going to want to get your gross margin. A lot of people ask someone what the LTV is, someone says it. It's just because, frankly, someone told them that like 3 years ago, and no one's actually fully done the math. So all you need right here is the lifespan of the customer, gross margin, average order value, and you can actually get your LTV. Pretty cool. Then we want to make sure when we do our customer acquisition cost, we want to look at total cost, team cost, software cost, ad spend, and then that will actually allow us to get some really great channel level data. And then all we need is to manage at a channel level what our different rates are, what our different close rates are. And now you have a really, really great way to decide how you want to spend your money. And you can build the confidence of everyone giving you a budget. So really, really cool. I have all of these available for everyone who's attended. And Brent's going to be sending out the sheets. You'll actually get all of these templates for your own personal use. So let's look at this question. What's currently the most important metric for your team to track?
Awesome. So let's take a look at that. We have the answers up right now for everybody. Again, if you could take a moment and vote for us. Is it conversions, demos, free trials? Is it new traffic? Is it LTV, CAC ratio? Is it marketing qualified leads, MQLs? Is it revenue?
I'm excited for this one. I think I know what it's going to be, but I'm actually really excited to see what people say.
It's interesting. It's closer than you'd think. I'm going to give it just a little bit longer. And I'm going to go ahead and close it now. So sorry if you're missing your boat, but we want to go ahead and get this up, and then let me share it. Thought it was interesting that conversions ended up competing so well with MQLs.
My gosh, I didn't. I thought, okay, well, this just goes to the state of attribution, right? Revenue is still such a nightmare for teams to track. And I think that's going to go right into something we can talk about. So validated tactics. Okay. We're going to put our CMO hat on right now. So I am now the CMO of a mid-market enterprise SaaS firm. Now, because we don't have unlimited time, I didn't want to walk through every single tactic, but I do think at a high level, these would be some of the paid tactics I'd be pursuing. So Google Ads, podcast advertising. This is like a secret weapon, by the way. Podcast advertising on especially on niche podcasts, like so ones that are really specific. So let's say you're a software company and you do ETL or something like that. Having like finding an ETL podcast and like advertising there, not only great for new business, but also great for talent. Like if you're growing, right, servicing your clients is just as important as getting new clients. And so I think podcasts are really, really strategic. LinkedIn advertising, we're going to talk about conversation ads, but it's the most successful thing we've ever launched in over 7 years. Review sites, Terminus, sponsor webinars. On the organic side, SEO, content, partner marketing, and PR. Now, one of the coolest parts that we should be, making sure we have in place before we get too deep in our tactics is making sure we have the foundation, right? I gave you the spreadsheet, but the spreadsheet's pretty codependent on how people move through your funnel. Now, I've been on Marketo. We've had hundreds of clients on Marketo. We've had hundreds of clients on Pardot. I have to say, HubSpot has been exponentially the easiest to democratize and manage. In other words, I don't need the marketing ops person to try to do something crazy in Marketo. Anyone on my team can go into HubSpot, get the data they need, and be effective. And I found that while Marketo might be more powerful, nothing is more powerful than your team having the information they need when they need it and being able to actually do it themselves. So you have your spreadsheet, right? We need our data, but we also, with revenue being such a big gap, should be thinking about OCT. OCT is called offline conversion tracking, and that's integrating Salesforce into your Google Ads. Now, the reason this is so important is because Google has come a long way. Now, I've been on the speaking stage for like 3 years straight now, saying you can't trust Google's smart bidding. I can't remember how long. It's been a minute. And the truth is you actually can now. Like Target CPA is winning. So our pay team here worked their absolute butt off, rebuilt all our accounts in Q2, migrated away from the old school way of thinking of single keyword ad groups, which was I can't trust Google, I need to control everything, and started bringing our clients into Target CPA. Now, the issue with Target CPA is how do you determine it if you don't know your LTV CAC ratio? And so the big encouragement to me is if we go back to here, is we actually know how much we can pay for a top of funnel lead, an intro call, or a demo with this modeling. So once we know that, we've got this Target CPA, we've got HubSpot, Marketo, or Pardot doing all our funnel analytics. Now we have this system. So the way SmartBroad works is we're going to actually trust Google's engine. So we're going to want to integrate it with our Salesforce using offline conversion tracking. And then we're going to run broad keywords. Negatives are super critical here, okay? You can't just let your account run wild. So you want to preload it with all the obvious negatives you can think about, and then you need to do daily management. Now, a lot of agencies out there don't do daily management, and that's a big gap. So what it kind of helps with Directive is we're in your account every day, mining these negatives and changing our assumption that we have to beat Google to how can we better empower Google? In other words, how can we get more accurate with Target CPA? How can we get better at understanding negatives? How can we get better at really understanding ad copy, ad testing, conversion rate optimization? Let the computers do what they're going to do. If you're running a PPC agency right now and not embracing the fact that Google is coming for your bid management, you're missing the entire boat, okay? And so what we want to do is use this SmartBroad, and I want to give you guys some data from this. So this is across our whole portfolio in Q2. From rolling out SmartBroad campaigns, we saw a 36% lower CPC, a 22% higher click-through rate, 13% higher conversion rate, and a 44% lower CPA. Really, really cool. And if you aren't doing this or asking someone to do it for you, this would be one of the easiest, quickest wins you can get by creating leverage on your existing spend. We also do have pretty good pipeline visibility with our clients, and we saw 0 to negligible differences in decreased lead quality, which was definitely a big concern of ours going in. It's like, cool, can we lower the CPA? But then what happens to the pipeline and quality? We saw no negative effects. So definitely something to consider and want everyone to be aware of. Next, I'm only doing like the big hitters today, guys. So conversation ads was a complete game changer. I have been trying to make LinkedIn work for a long time. Why? Well, B2B companies care about quality over quantity, just in general. And most actual organizations are getting to this point today. And one of the issues with search, SEO, and PPC in the traditional sense is that I can't control firmographic data. Google has rolled out some white label stuff with industries and employee size, and frankly, it's been garbage. The data's not there yet. I think, like everything else, kind of Google rolls out, it just needs more time, and I think we'll get there. But LinkedIn always had this phenomenal ability to give me firmographic data. I can target demand gen marketers with X amount of employees in these industries, and then I can use what I like to call single persona ad groups or campaigns, and then write essentially one asset. So 7 deadly sins of demand gen, turn to the 7 deadly sins of demand gen for CMOs. And then I only advertise it to CMOs. Then the 7 deadly sins of demand gen for VPs of marketing. And I only advertise it to VPs of marketing. I don't have to create new content. I can just change the creative and the cover page, and it's great. But I couldn't get people from reading my 7 deadly sins asset to book an intro call. In other words, I could get MQLs, but not SQLs. And the cost per MQL was so much higher than just buying the lead from Zoom Info that it didn't make sense until conversation ads came. And now, for the first time ever, we're able to use conversation ads with our clients at a $55 cost per lead to book an intro call, to book a discovery call. It's been an absolute game changer. Because of this, and just so you guys have an idea, we're having a click-through rate of almost 70%. So we're personifying everything. We're using gift giving as an offer. And this has just been an absolute game changer. So if you're sitting there today and you want to know how to take your ABM efforts to the next level, or help yourself get from MQL to SQL and get those intro calls going in this kind of COVID time, really, really, really effective tactic. I like to think we're getting pretty close to perfecting this at Directive, and it's working exceptionally well across the board. So something to definitely try out on your own for sure. Now, lastly, on the tactics side, we're going to talk about content marketing. Content marketing is tough, especially for SaaS companies who don't have a brand. I struggle with this with myself. Directive is not the largest brand in the agency space yet. We will get there, but not yet. And so because of that, it's kind of like a tree falling in the forest. If nobody hears it, did it fall? Well, the same could be said about your blog post. If your blog post goes live and nobody reads it, shares it, comments on it, engages with it, your sales development team can't leverage it, your AEs aren't using it for follow-up or to increase close rate, did your content really go live? I'm telling you right now, it's a big problem. And so what I'd like for you to think is, how can you create content that you only do with partners? In other words, how can we start everything we want to do with content creation with promotion baked in the start? So like, we're here today. Why am I here? Because Search Engine Journal has a far greater audience than I do. So if I'm going to do content, let's make sure it gets in front of an audience, right? The same thing could be said for you. So I want to get your kind of creative juices flowing. So here's 3 ways we're literally starting to do this later this week, going into next. One is called sour interviews, okay? I wanted to take every idea, and this is a lot from our team, by the way. They wanted to take every idea that's just been beaten to a pulp in the game and change it. In other words, right now, people are like, hey, we should do content. Yeah, let's start a podcast, okay? Like, I've been through this myself. We had a podcast. It did okay. But the truth is our podcast wasn't intrinsically different, more engaging, or creative. In other words, the podcast didn't have segments. It was just as good as the guest we had, and that was the podcast. So there wasn't anything different about our podcast. Well, the same thing could go for webinars. Like, are you just going to do another webinar? Because if it's not different and you're not doing it with a partner, like you're hosting your own webinar, what makes it work, right? And so one of the ideas was sour interviews. So instead of doing a podcast, we want to do it on YouTube. Bring it out, make it come to life, have it be videos. We're going to ship them sour candy, and then we're going to both just eat sour candy while doing an interview. I thought, wow, that's a lot more engaging. The next is a SaaS marketing competition. Okay, so the idea here is we're going to take myself and another CMO, and we're going to have a competition, right? We're going to go on Angel's List or on Capterra or something, and we're going to scroll, boom, and then stop. And right when you stop, that's the company. We each have 30 minutes to build a go-to-market strategy, and the audience gets to vote. Once again, a different type of content, something that's new, could actually work because I myself might want to actually show up and watch it. And then lastly, I think one of the gaps we have in content is we don't think about how it supports sales deep enough. So every Friday, we're going to do a roundtable. And the beautiful part about the roundtable is that our SDR team, our account executives, and our marketing ops team is able to use that to essentially get people from MQL to SQL. So anybody you've had a proposal with that's on the edge, anyone who's not sure they want the meeting, anyone who just wants to explore, invite them to the Friday roundtable. It's going to be capped at 10 to 20 people, and we're just going to have a conversation about a tactic. So maybe this Friday it's ABM. Next Friday it's content syndication. The Friday after it's financial modeling. And it's just going to be a great time for other people to learn from each other on an easy, simple roundtable. But a great way to interact with your audience, create content that matters, and at the end of the day, drive revenue from your content marketing, and then come up with ideas that make your brand resonate. So if you do like these ideas that we've been sharing today, I've been pretty diligent, not perfect, but pretty diligent of sharing 2-minute videos every day. You can follow me on LinkedIn, follow me on Twitter, and I'm sharing these types of ideas in just 2-minute segments. Pretty cool way to try to get a different perspective. Now, we've talked a lot about what we're doing as individual contributors, ideas, tactics, financial modeling, but what about people? At the end of the day, we're only as good as marketers as our team. And so, unfortunately, this isn't a topic that's covered a lot. There's not a lot of people out there writing about like how they get more out of their team members, how they choose what to focus on, how they prioritize things, how they run meetings. So I wanted to give you all a couple tidbits today that you could kind of walk away with, because we don't do any of the things we've talked about up to this point in a bubble, right? We're fully integrated across different departments, different products, different countries. And so I want to talk about people. Now, I think one of the core things that's missing in a marketing organization today, especially in the SaaS community, is a mantra, an actual belief system, okay? So I want you to think about how you can create your own mantra. I'm going to use Directive as a sample and give you kind of how we think about it. And then obviously I'd love for you to think about your own. And I think this could be a great homework in a sense of what you could do different. So I like to break it into 3 different areas: financial, creativity, and strategic. We all have brilliant ideas, and they could work, but we have kind of, I've seen, and myself, I'm definitely guilty of this, the copycat mentality. Everyone's doing a podcast, we need a podcast. Everyone's doing a blog, we need a blog. Everyone's doing webinars, we need a webinar. And instead, what I think we need to do is think about what our mantra is, what we want to be, what we believe in, and so that it can guide the different agencies we work with, the different marketing people that come and go. We need a long-term fundamental belief system. So for us at Directive, we want people to know that you can create an idea and you can promote, like push things upward, and we can all together work towards an objective. So the focus for us is financially validated, shockingly memorable, and strategically aligned for the next 36 months. So if you have an idea, you now know the rubric. You know the grading criteria for if it's going to get approved or not. So financially validated. It means an experiment or historical spend in a campaign/channel has yielded an LTV CAC of at least 2, and we feel strongly that we can reach 3 with optimization. In other words, you can launch a test, and as long as you get to an LTV CAC of 2 within our sales cycle, we can then take that from beta, which is a test, to alpha, which is fully integrated into our ongoing marketing mix. It needs to be shockingly memorable. Any top of funnel campaigns, ads, content, sponsorships, etc., cut through the noise and leave a positive, lasting impression on our ideal customer persona. And then lastly, strategically aligned. Any experiment we launch today channel we fund or campaign we craft would be successful if we doubled our minimums. In other words, if we know over the next 36 months we want to double our rates, then could we essentially get a customer who's upstream? In other words, 36 months from now, if we move from mid-market to enterprise with the stuff we're working on today, fit for where we want to be tomorrow. And I think that's really, really important. Now, how do you create a culture where your team can submit new ideas and has their own model, right? Because this stuff we talked about is great for managers privately, right? You have all the different channels, but some of this might be private information, things you don't want your whole team to see, and it doesn't necessarily empower them. Now, what we did here at Directive is we built our own model and gave it to all our team members so that they could essentially submit, like, I read through Harvard Business Review and I wanted my team to do like NPV or IRR analysis so they can make a business case for why we should buy intercom, why we need chat, what that could do, or why we need to do sponsored webinars. So I wanted to use today's example. Let's say that the webinar cost $10,000. I'm not going to say the exact amount it did cost. It's not 10,000, but this is an example. And we know that from the webinar, we're going to get 500 leads. Okay. So this model allows your team to have, see how this is current and then projected? So you can update all your current numbers here. Okay. This is just sample data. And they say, cool, I want to do a sponsored webinar with SEJ. And I think I can get us 500 leads. That would immediately tell us what the incremental projected revenue is from this campaign and the forecast. All of a sudden, you've just given your team rocket fuel. They can now drive strategy, have complete alignment, know if a campaign is going to be successful or not, and start to do everything you ever dreamed about and be fully empowered. This is an amazing model, and it's all right here for you guys, so definitely want you to check it out. I found it to be pretty instrumental in changing the way our team drives our growth on being fully aligned with finance and myself. So, in closing, no marketing presentation is complete without talking about tools. So here's a couple of my favorites. I'm not going to explain all of them, but here's some of the tech stack we love: HubSpot, Salesforce, Hotjar, Unbounce, Terminus, Optimizer, and TrueClicks. Pretty cool PPC softwares. Outreach.io, Connect and Sell. Another one that's on here is SEO Scout. They let you do A/B testing. So like we're working with Allstate, and we just ranked them #1 for car insurance. Well, we had to split test car insurance versus auto insurance across every query in the country. That was a big win. Things like SEO Scout can be really, really helpful to start creating like statistical significance and true impact around the changes you make as an SEO. But thank you so much for your time today. Feel free to follow along with us at Directive in our journey. And yeah, thanks. Looking forward to hopping on and chatting with you all in the chat. Thanks.
Awesome work, Garrett. Really, really great. A lot of good things in there. If you guys didn't notice, we popped all those links into the chat. So highly suggest taking a look at those and kind of getting through those different spreadsheets, playing with them, checking them out. And then I'm pretty sure Garrett would be open to commenting if you ever needed any help with those, to reach out to him and so forth. So definitely grab those resources. Love that the fact that you're so willing to kind of give those out. I do think a lot of times it's very daunting to try to figure out numbers and to try to play with a lot of these numbers, and having some of these kind of quick jump off points in those resources is going to be great. We do have some questions that I'd love to dive into.
Brent, I want to add something real quick for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have a free society for SaaS marketers, well, called Society. So it's called Directive Society. You can find it on our website. If you have questions about anything that we talked about today and we don't answer it, you can join Society completely free. And the whole growth team at Directive moderates every channel. So any question you want, we'll answer free of charge and really help you out on all those different pieces for sure.
Awesome, great job there. Really great resource, and sometimes that's all you really need, is just somebody to validate an idea or to just kind of point you in a different direction, and you can truck on. Definitely great idea there. Great share there. You know, now we have a little bit of time. Again, if you have questions, throw them in there. Even if they're, if you feel like they're slightly unrelated, you could definitely throw them in there and see if we can get Garrett to share some information on that. So first question I wanted to add in here to ask in here is you mentioned comparison site articles, and you've mentioned those before. I think in the last webinar we did, we really kind of dove into some of those. But what I wanted to ask in here, one of the questions in here is, what's the best way to get into those comparison site articles, and should we be making our own, or are there any of them that require us to pay for inclusion, things like that?
Yeah. So great question. Great question. Everything is pay to play. I don't know any review site that I've come across where it's genuinely authentic. I mean, maybe the Magic Quadrant, but I've heard otherwise. But of the review sites, the Capteras, the G2s, the Software Advices, the et cetera, those are all paid. And so now the beautiful part is you can have a profile and you can choose not to pay. And depending on the competitiveness of your industry, you might still show up. But if you're in a competitive space, you most likely are going to have to bid if you want to show up above the fold and be able to really drive any value from being positioned. And so to answer your question, you just go through their application process to advertise, and then they all operate a little differently. So Software Advice does a cost per lead model that others don't. Capterra does CPC. I believe G2 is on a SaaS fee. So you have all different types of approaches, and they all frankly work differently for different industries, depending on which sites rank better for the keywords that are most closely correlated with purchase intent for your product or service.
Follow-up question just from me, because I'm sure people are going to wonder this. What should they expect to pay? Like, what's fair and what's not?
Yeah, so I actually I thought that might be something. So I brought, let me see if I can go back to this slide real quick. Right here. So this is actual data on the review sites ranking for accounting software. And essentially for that query, Google CPC is 28 on the high side, 498 on the low. Capterra is $36, Software Advice 30, and 23 on GetApp. So all of them are a little different, as you can see. Remember, the CPC is and the cost per acquisition, the native performance, what your in-channel numbers are not nearly as important as your CRM numbers. In other words, like in our data, we've seen review sites can have a 300% lower cost per opportunity than Google Ads, even though Google Ads has a lower cost per acquisition in platform.
Beautiful. Real quick, can you throw up for a little bit your tech stack ecosystem slide? Somebody asked they'd like to just poke it, to peek at it while we talk a little bit.
100%.
Next question I have here is, what recommendations, or I said that very long. What recommendations, I was gonna say, what do you recommend at the same time? What recommendations do you have for source attribution for SaaS with a free trial? Seems like since most SaaS products have free trials, we can't just ignore that.
Yeah, so you mean source like first click, last click, or do we mean channel?
Let's try both just in case, because I don't have verification on that.
Yeah, so the example I gave, so if you look at this, you can build it however you want. So like I just did this at a high level here, but you can copy the other model and do by channel. So you have high level SDR marketing portfolio, ABM, and then you have SDR, and I still have marketing, but then I also have by channel, right? So you can still build the same thing and just change the months to channels, and the data is the same. So I really left this kind of as a blank slate so you can use it depending how you want. So you can make this overall, right? And then we can duplicate and we can make it, channel. And then this becomes terminus, this becomes organic, etc. So this will allow you all to do it kind of like that. Now, I think the bigger question here, Brent, is what I've found, and this is like a universal issue, especially, I mean, I see it in software because that's where I spend most of my time, but I think it's fairly universal, is you have two issues, okay? Organizations with large sales development teams and have been in the industry for a while and has great sales orgs, theoretically should have named their accounts and fully mapped their accounts. And then if your organization does first click attribution, you will always, always, always fail as a marketer. Okay? Because essentially you are trying to get people into your funnel who already exist, and so organic won't get any attribution. So let's say you have a sales development team, they're selling into Oracle, and they add the director of demand gen at Oracle into Marketo. Well, if that director of demand gen then fills out your form, you won't get credit for that in organic because they already had first touch through sales development. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Conversely, if you only do last touch, organic only gets credit, even though the SDR has been calling the director of demand gen for the last 30 months. And so really what we need is position-based, U or W-based, just any type of multi-touch attribution so we can properly allocate each. In HubSpot, they call this all or any. In other words, in HubSpot, you can see all, which are people that didn't exist in your database, became a contact, and went to become customer, or any, which is anyone in your database who you've now re-engaged at any one point through any channel. And that is a much more accurate understanding of your funnel and to hopefully answer your question.
Beautiful. All right, let me dive in and find our next question. Um, I work for a major healthcare certification organization based here in the US. Do you think our webinars can be toned as podcasts and can be posted over qualified channels? Will it work?
Okay, so, and this is nothing against the fact that I'm on a webinar today, so please take this with some nuance. I personally wish and I like when it's interactive. So if I could see you right now and we were talking, that to me is the holy grail. And so to answer your question, I don't think you can make a webinar a podcast because like it's just not the same, because theoretically a webinar is a screen share of some type of value proposition. Like, so for when I do a webinar, it takes a lot more prep time because I got to build a deck. Simultaneously, for me to be a guest on a podcast, I don't have to have prep. So it's easier as an executive for me to do podcasts than webinars. But they're not the same medium, right? A webinar is just a digital conference presentation, while a podcast is just a digital interview, and they're not necessarily the same. I think in both, though, the challenge would be how do you make it more interactive with your audience? So I think the second you're interacting with your audience, you're creating a more valuable experience for all involved.
Yeah, and I would just add that like it also depends on what you're looking for in quality, right? I mean, if
Yep.
you have like a podcast, a big podcast audience, and you're kind of like randomly putting out stuff and you're not putting a ton of production in there, but people value you as a person and your information, you could probably get away with throwing a webinar on a podcast and it would still get some traction with your audience. But if you have an audience that's like used to seeing real shows, and then you have something that's just a webinar, then it's definitely not going to meet their needs. Another suggestion, if you're just looking to not want to get rid of some of that material, is you could actually take excerpts, right? You could talk about the webinar that you did in a podcast and then do like a couple minute excerpt on what you might have talked about that does work without visuals, and that could allow you to sell some of that
Channel,
material.
right? You get it on YouTube.
Yeah,
Another
YouTube.
great way to do it. And if you're going to do a podcast, I really do believe in the power of segments. I love podcasts. I listen to some of the largest ones out there. What I've seen is the truly most successful podcasts have a reason you tune in for the hosts and their segments, not just the guests. So if you can make your podcast less dependent on your guest and more dependent on your hosts, your segments, and your internal content, I think you'll be more effective.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're definitely going to get more of a consistent audience if people are just tuning in for guests and they're not tuning in when they don't have a guest they want to hear from. So yeah,
100%.
definitely.
100%.
You mentioned 2-minute videos, that you're doing 2 minutes videos on YouTube. Why 2 minutes? Why not longer? Did you do some analysis or did you just kind of pick 2 minutes just randomly, or what was your?
So I have been doing videos into the void for way too long. You can go check out my YouTube channel or just scroll. You'll see me doing videos from like 2017. I mean, I've been doing videos for a long time and not really getting a ton of views or ever building an audience. So I wanted to try something different. I wanted something that I thought I would kind of like, where maybe I have to use the bathroom real quick and I only have a couple seconds and I pull it up, or I don't know, I kind of wanted to take all the different types of social videos I see people creating and I found them all to kind of fit within that shorter time frame. And so I wanted to try something a little different than my old ones that were a lot longer. And I felt like they couldn't be transactional. Like I had to, if I wanted to watch one of my videos, I realized I needed to take some time to like find the headspace to do it. I wanted these to be things that you would maybe only watch 30 seconds of or 45 seconds as you scrolled, and hopefully make it a little more consumable. Not sure if it's totally working yet, but I'm trying to be consistent and see where it goes.
Nice. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. All right, I'm gonna kind of push us into we're starting to get a ton of like really quick kind of questions popping in, which I think can be answered pretty quick. So we're gonna do kind of like a fast track through some of these questions. Okay.
Let's do it.
How do you recommend getting started with LinkedIn ads?
Ooh, take a really I I would just do conversation ads. I would run
What is
conversation ads and
conversation ads,
then
real quick, by the way? You say
yeah.
conversation ads, but can you just define that real quick?
Yeah, so it's a bot. So it looks like a drift bot or something like that. So essentially, it's what InMail never became. So sponsored InMail never worked. I tried it for years, and it was just largely ignored. I don't know if conversation ads will get largely ignored when they become more popular. So I might be killing myself here on this. But what it is it asks a question. It says, hi Brent, this is Garrett at Directive. We do X, Y, and Z for SaaS companies, and we would love to, talk to you about this. Do you have? And then it says, are you interested? If you say yes, say cool. Do you manage digital? And it's like yes or no. You say yes, cool. And so it kind of goes through this conditional logic with a bot, and at the end, it uses the lead gen form. So you just auto submit. All your information's all populated. Just takes one click of the button, and then we send you to a Calendly link to book an intro call. And we have about a 75 to 77% conversion rate right now on that.
Beautiful. I'm trying to read through these. When looking at discoverability on page 1, how many queries are you searching for per client? And are you breaking down one main query per solution major feature?
100%. I mean, the deeper you can go, the better, right? I want to understand intent. So everything I do for a client exists on a timeline, right? They pay you X, you need to get results by Y. And the more I try to do through the website when it comes to proactive growth, in other words, like content creation and other things, the longer the timeline. So if I can essentially shortcut that timeline to success and help the client better allocate their budget, the key then is where could I position the brand to be discoverable when there's purchase intent? So I can go through Google Ads, mine a search term report, find every search query, the actual words someone communicated, and hopefully, right, I integrated this to Salesforce, so I got a little bit of CRM data in there, and then I use that as a starting point. So what are their top performing search terms, not keywords, but search terms, and then can I go take more market share? So since everybody's still doing Google Ads and not everybody's doing review sites, I use the Google Ads to discover profitable opportunities, and then I expand upon that using the keyword research from the SEO team to find other opportunities, and then every type of feature, solution, product, moment where there's purchase intent, I want to position your brand. And then measure it in my LTV CAC sheet, and then spend more or less based on what's driving opportunities, deals, and revenue.
Beautiful. When you shared your sample of LTV CAC channel analysis, there's a team cost in there. Is that team cost payroll and benefits, or is it something else?
Yeah, payroll benefits. So like, let's say I've got a digital PR person, or I have a writer in house, or I have an advertiser, or I'm using an agency. Whatever that is, I want to make sure I'm accounting for that. I'm not blending it when I do channel analysis, so I'm not taking also the cost of admin or AEs. So I'm holding all of those things constant, assuming that a lead from LinkedIn doesn't cost me more of an AE's time than a lead from Google Ads, which is true. And so I'm normalizing blended cost, and then I'm just using channel specific costs without any weighting to try to get an accurate understanding of incrementality of where I can spend the next dollar or spend less on any one channel.
What are your views on CDP platforms?
Content. Let me try it. Let me play this game. I want to try this out. CDP, content distribution platforms.
Yeah, I guess that would probably be right.
If they're talking about content syndication, I found that people do it more so that they can hit their numbers than to grow a business. In other words, a B2B demand gen marketer has to get 2,500 leads. They're only at 1,700. They got 2 weeks left on the quarter. They go splurge on content syndication, hit their lead goal, but then the SDRs aren't happy and they kind of wipe it off their plate and let sales deal with it. I'm not saying it's right, but that's kind of how I've seen most people do it. I wouldn't say it's the best allocation of capital from any business that I've seen yet.
What do you think are some of the top referring sites for SaaS marketing?
For SaaS marketing.
Yeah, I'm guessing when
Referring.
we were talking about doing some of the site, comparison sites and stuff like that, maybe that's the top referring sites. Which
Yeah,
ones?
Capterra is the biggest. Capterra probably does the most I've seen. And Software Advice. They're both owned by Gartner, so that means you only have to ask your customer for a review once. That's actually really powerful, right? Because G2 is a separate review platform than Capterra and Software Advice, so you have to ask customers twice or different customers. So definitely something to be aware of there.
Any advice for the best ways to collect reviews, specifically Google reviews for B2B, and show the value of them?
Google reviews for B2B, like Google My Business. I mean, Whitespark has some great resources and PDF like that you can hand out. I did that. So like obviously we do Allstate, and I used to do a ton in B2C about like the first 2 years of the business. We were Moz local recommended, and we did a lot of local stuff. So that was always really important. We also use stuff like Get 5 Stars, which is still I think now GatherUp. We have a client called Moment Feed that has some great proximity search solutions. So definitely check out Moment Feed. But for B2B, I wouldn't really highlight Google My Business as a review area over websites and review sites that rank for your bottom of funnel queries. I'd focus more on discoverability than brand centric reviews because they do less for to move the needle for you.
Unrelated question, real quick.
Okay.
What book are you recommending the most right now?
Well, I try to teach, so I'm like trying to teach myself to be a head of sales. So I read everything from Winning by Design. I read their Blueprint SaaS organization book on Monday. It's like 125, and then this yesterday. So I read like 250 pages last 2 days on like this stuff. I love learning this, and I'm like designing our full like sales process. And I'm like taking notes. So I love that stuff. I'm also reading Innovator's Dilemma, Good to Great. I really always enjoyed Good to Great. I say Good to Great and the Flywheel Effect. It's like an appendix of that book. Probably the most helpful book for thinking more strategically about your business and creating long-term value. So if you ever want to sell your business, if you ever want to create sustainability over extended periods of time, I think Good to Great's a pretty great book.
The one recommendation I'll throw out there that fundamentally changed my view on marketing, and I feel like is almost like an essential knowledge to have when you're looking at any marketing campaigns, is a book called Contagious.
Yep.
Which
Love
really
that one.
teaches you, why things work, which I think is super important when you're preparing and planning to have success, is to understand what it means to have success, why it
I
has
loved
success.
Contagious. That
Yeah,
book
it's
was so
such
good. That one, Made
an
to
amazing.
Stick, Contagious. Those are Purple Cow. All those are kind of in that same vein of style of book, and really, really great.
Is there a way to track the ROI of branding expenditures?
Okay, so the way I like to think about branding for everyone out there is try to spend as little as you can to never stop spending. So yes,
That's a
there
really
is.
great point. That's a huge point that you make there, because one of the things that's really important about a brand is that you never go away. Like the brands you love today and have been around for 20 years are still branding today and have for 20 years. Like it never does
I
go
don't know
away.
how Burger King can afford these dang ads, but they're always advertising. Like I don't know anyone who ever goes, but they're always advertising. So like my whole point here is like usually I found that top of funnel advertising doesn't work because people can't even make the campaign last as long as their sales cycle. So let's
Yeah.
say you're at a SaaS organization with a 9-month sales cycle, but you do a 3-month brand campaign. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to say it worked then, right? So I would argue that you just need to spend as much as you can to never stop, or as little as possible that it never stops, and then slowly grow it as you see results over time. Um, but yeah, that's been my take on it.
Yeah, I mean, I have a buddy that built a box subscription, a company called BoxyCharm, which is one of the top makeup subscription boxes in the world, and he built it all on influencer marketing. And when we talk about it, he talks about how marketing is like building a TV station online. You have to have your channels and your shows and your different demographics, but you absolutely have to keep it going for the long term, and he and continue, and he's been doing it for years, and now his company's like a couple $100 million company. It's like
Yep.
crushing it, right? So definitely great. I think that kind of runs us out of time. I do want everybody to note that we did get a lot of questions, and I'm going to have those questions sent over to Garrett, and he's going to try to squeeze in some answers so that we can maybe get those for the recap post. Again, Garrett mentioned that he has, what's the group there, Directive you mentioned?
Yeah, it's called Directive Society. So,
Society, yeah.
um, yeah, go to our homepage, click on the top bar. It says Society. Um, Join the group. Seriously, like if you want me to answer a question, I answer every question someone asks me in Society. I don't get to every email in all honesty, but I do get to everything in that Slack group. So if you got a question, ask it there. And the honest truth is my team is way smarter at almost all of this. And so I'll tag them if they have a better answer. I'll try if I'm the best answer. But they're all in there. It's really active. Like it's not just us. Like there's a lot of really brilliant minds in the SaaS community, all sharing insights, asking questions, getting feedback. It's a really non-promotional, fun community that I really enjoy being a part of.
So definitely go over and check that out. We'll try to get the answers from the questions for the recap post. Thank you everyone for taking the time to join us, for asking your questions, for being attentive. Garrett, thank you for joining us and sharing all this amazing information. Again, always a pleasure. Thanks for coming, and thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everyone.